he making this paper for?
この紙は何のために作ってるんですか？どうしてるんですか？
これはですね、浮世絵をですね、ほんで額へ入れたり、いろいろなお客様がまあ鑑賞というかね、そういうようなものに。
Can you remember?
Yes. Well, till 25 years ago, in this area, we've been making very thin papers, but because of word processor and copying machine, that paper suddenly stopped being sold, and we had a hard time. Then I carried on making a paper, thin paper for calligraphy for a while, but then museum opened. And then I started meeting people, and I started asking people what sort of papers they want. Taking their suggestions or requests, I developed the papers which you are seeing today. So they are all my original ideas to make this kind of papers.
ちょっと長すぎたですかね。
This kind of paper making, or traditional paper making, has gone on for many hundreds of years. Do you think it will go on into the future for much longer, or will it die out?
後継ぎがないですよね。後継者。ほんで後継者があればですね、今からずっと続くけど、問題は後継者と思いますね。
The biggest problem of that is that successor. If we can find a successor, this skill will be carried on. But at the moment, nobody wants to take it over. So that's the big problem we are having now.
Are there any special rituals or things that you have to do? For example, give sake to the kami, or go to a Shinto shrine, or anything when in association with paper making, because it is dangerous or difficult, or you don't know what is going to happen.
Washington's concerned, we don't do anything like that. I don't think anybody's doing that kind of ritual thing when you make papers.
I think that's probably enough. As we thought, the answer is no. Actually, it's interesting because it shows the complete predictability of the process. Pottery and things where you can't be sure of the outcome. Sword making even. You have to have ritual. I mean, it's an old anthropological theory that whenever there's a high degree of uncertainty, you can't control the outcome, there are too many factors, then you need magic to just bridge over the gap. And even my son-in-law, who's a potter, has special rituals while he's making pottery nowadays. He has to have a certain kind of beer which he drinks and so on. But with this, it always works, more or less, I imagine. I mean, it's a set of procedures, and so there's always certainty that it's going to come out, so you don't need any magic, completely magic-free activity. But perhaps one last question I could ask.
What strikes you as being fundamentally different, the Japanese paper making and its significance? I mean, what is different here, do you think, to the kind of paper making we get in the West?
Well, what is most striking to me anyway is that this is a natural substance. It's a fibre that comes straight from a tree, and you take it off, you peel it off, and then you pulp it and boil it, and you finally get to these filaments. And so it's organic, straight contact between you and nature. And one consequence of this, and the contrast with the West, Western paper was made out of pulp from cloth and rags, and therefore it was artificial in many ways, and it required much more preparation in the early stages to get the fibers broken down to this stage. And as a result, it was really totally uneconomic to do what I think they must have done here before they had that machine, which was they just pounded it with manual labor. In the West, if you'd started pounding bits of rag with manual labor, it's much tougher, and it would have taken too long. You just couldn't have made paper that way. So you had to have machinery, you had to have paper mills, you had to have water power. And so the whole part of the milling revolution in the medieval West, just at the time when paper was beginning to be invented and used was due to the fact that you had to have some power force other than human labor to do that. Here you can do everything, and indeed this whole process doesn't encourage mechanization at all. It's an organic process from the beginning to the end. It's done by one family. It's small production units. I mean, this is a tiny little craft that's going on in someone's house, whereas paper making in the West, they didn't make paper in England. In fact, for a long time, they sent the rags abroad. They were made to paper in large industrial concerns driven by non-human power, and then the paper was re-imported. This is just a little craft activity which anyone could do, and probably many of the farmers used to do it part-time in the winters or when they weren't working in other things. So this is a small organic craft, manual, non-division of labor. One person can do the whole process from the beginning to the end. In the West you get the division of labor, you get machines, you get factories for making paper, so you get a huge division between two types of civilization as a result of that. So the effect of the fact that they've got this wonderful mulberry tree, which the West didn't have, from which you could take this organic substance, had an enormous influence on the possibilities of an industrial revolution.
Surely you could divide this process up into, if you wanted to run it more efficiently, you could have someone doing this, someone doing that. I mean, so why?
Well, I suppose you could have done, but I think the laws of the division of labour that Adam Smith suggested, whereby if you divide a very simple process into bits, you get it more efficient. There's no more way of getting this more efficient. I mean, basically you've got a lot of fibres, and one person coming and doing this, and another person doing the next stage, another person doing the next stage, each stage would be no more efficient. You wouldn't learn any skills. The skills that you need for this kind of process are learned. So one person, and one result of this, of course, is that one of the great tragedies of the West is this division of labour. It leads to efficiency, but it leads to a complete loss of any contact with what you're making. You don't see the process through. It's what Marx termed alienation. You're alienated from the final product. Here, he himself would be a satisfied man because he takes the whole process from the original cutting of the wood right through to the final paper. So he sees he is linked with the product of his labour, whereas in the West you make the head of the pin, pass on the pin to someone else, and you never see it right through. So I think this does actually make it possible not to divide the labour.
Arigato.
Arigato.